I think Islam hates us.
They have done nothing except wreak havoc and terror for our faith and our religion.
When we stand up to those who oppress our communities, that Allah accepts from us that as a form of jihad.
Foundations of society are fragile. We must be the shepherds of our own civilization.
Anyone answers either yes or no without making necessary distinctions, both are not telling the truth. They're lying.
Father, we pray that your word will become a hammer that breaks rocks into pieces. That you will raise up in this nation pulpits and prophets that will call the nation back to repentance.
Will you distance yourself from those who think differently, or will you join us at the table and talk about what is really important? This is the Al-Ma'idah Initiative, conversation without compromise.
I moved to Seattle with my family. I have to work. If I'm not work, no one gonna pay the rent of the whole house, you know. Some people, because they came before me, so they can afford it. They came in 90s, so they work, they have kids here, their kids don't work, but I have to work, you know. So there is certain levels between the income. I think the income play more role in to living here.
Yeah, well, it does, but I think that as men, there's always the first thing we have to do for our families is to take responsibility regardless of the circumstances. So I remember when I was first married, the hardest year of my life was I had just had my first son, and I was supporting I was a single income provider for a wife and a new baby when I was making about $2,400 a month. And that was a really, really, really hard year. But what you've just got to figure out ways to work harder, but also smarter than the people around you. Otherwise, you're not going to make it here.
True. It's it's even you from England, from UK. If you see in UK, let's talk about the insurance, the health insurance rules there. It's way better than here. Here you have to pay for it, you know. Right there you don't need to pay. Some school, I think colleges, you guys don't pay there, right?
We pay for college. It's less than here.
Less than here.
So total for 3 years there, you're going to be paying it's £9,000, which is about $14,000.
It's way less than here. Compared with Seattle or with America in general, you know how much it costs the school here, which means I have to do more to pay my school than the other people outside US, which is, I don't think it's fair.
I think America provides unique challenges, but also unique opportunities as well.
Yeah.
So I think for me personally, I would rather pay nothing in tax and get nothing from the government than I would have the government take care of healthcare. Now, what people also have to realize is that in a lot of areas, the American economy is carrying large parts of the Western world. So people talk about America spends so much of its GDP on military and Europe spends almost nothing. But that's because America spends so much money on its GDP. And the same is actually true with healthcare as well. That Europe gets cheaper healthcare because America spends so much on healthcare, which makes the industry competitive, which means new technology is always coming out here. Now, I think that is a bit unfair. I think that we should shift so it's more affordable for people in some direction. But if you do that, that would mean other countries that are not used to paying more for things would have to pay more for things. So I think a lot of people in America are suffering because we've kind of taken this mantle of the world's provider, at least for certain parts of the world. And I think the more we focused on us here, it would have a ripple effect across the world that would get some countries, including the country I'm from, make some slightly uncomfortable changes if we started doing things differently. So people like to complain about America.
Yeah.
And for sure, people have some valid critiques. But especially in Europe, if America changed to be more like Europe, then Europe would be less like Europe.
Why?
Well, because if you stop the American innovation going into the National Health Service in England, or if America spent the same amount on its defense budget as Europe did, they'd then have to spend more on both those things.
Okay.
So they would have to raise taxes, they'd have to offer less stuff, they'd have to maybe do more private insurance. So I'm okay with figuring out options for my healthcare here.
Okay.
And there's cheaper ways to do it as well. And same with school.
That means like America is responsible about the war, about Europe, for example. So that's what you try to say. It's because it sounds like we're working here to make people outside, like for example in Europe, living less, like more comfortable than here. So that's what you try. Like, I mean, the society here work more harder compared with the people who live there, and in the end, we are more tired than them.
Yes, and I don't think.
Even we make more money than them, but like we pay more things, like compared with the like UK, France.
Yes, and I don't think America has necessarily done that intentionally.
Okay.
But really, after the Second World War, America sort of became the policeman of the world at that point, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, as you have experienced to some capacity.
Yeah. You're right. I think like it's like, like the timeline of the empire of, let's call it empire of America. Like now it's the time that America is controlling the world. It's go shrink. Like now we, like in the past, they were like the Soviet Union and America. That like it was the big conflict in the world. Now we have Russia, we have China, like who's like competitive with America for the controlling Middle East, controlling some parts of like East Europe, the economy. I don't know if that like means like the American empire collapsed somehow, because if you see in Iraq, like they came 2003 and 2010, they give up. They was like the troop, like pulled from the street, got their like military bases, and they say, we're done. We have nothing to do here. We can't do anything anymore. That means it was for me, it was like the sign that said the American empire shrank.
I think there's a couple of things going on there. I think it's not necessarily just a sign of the American empire shrinking. It's the thing to understand about America is that it's very difficult to have long-term foreign policy in a republic system like America, because the country's sentiments on war change every few years.
Okay.
And if you have the Democrats viewing war one way, the Republicans viewing war another, one generation viewing war another way, another viewing another, there's this horrible tendency to not finish what we start. And that's a huge problem. So as a 14-year-old boy, I was entirely for the invasion of Iraq, because 14-year-old boys are for those kinds of things. But I've become generally very against intervention. I don't think we should have ever gone into Iraq. But if you're going to go and do what we did there, you've got to finish what you start. And unfortunately, America does not have enough internal cultural cohesion in it right now to be able to offer anything meaningful to Iraq in the long term. Because you've got different ideas competing for dominance here, which means that you can have no consistent long-term vision for the world, therefore no consistent long-term vision for Iraq.
It's America. Like I have no idea how, like, why America came to Iraq. To be honest, like 2001, what's happened? It's like it was hitting the 11th September. You know, the people. There was 19 Saudis who did this. And the leaders, from Taliban, like Afghanistan. So it makes sense they went to Afghanistan because it was the central of the Islamic terrorist. And the government was controlled by Taliban. But going to Iraq, it wasn't make sense at all. And I think America was just confused. They was just want to hit someone to show the world that we are here. Saddam Hussein was stupid. He was dictator. But I was fifth grade, and when I understand from my parents that Saddam's tried to say, okay, let's talk, let's sit with the American, let's talk. But America refused to talk to him. And you remember they were saying Saddam has the weapon that's which wasn't true at all. He has nothing, and they know they have nothing, but they just want to hit someone who was against America to show to the world that America is still strong and we are here. They came to Iraq 2003, and it was funny. I don't know if you heard about Muqtada Sadr, for example. He's one of the Iraqis, Ayatollah.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's one of the son of Ayatollah. His dad killed 1996, and he was just a young man who's have huge people who follow him, a lot of people, millions of people follow him. So 2003, when Saddam is gone, these people start to control the street, and they was in touch with American troops. Americans, I read that later, 10 years later. The guy who was control Iraq, the American, that's control Iraq at that time is called his name is Paul Bremer, if you know him. He was reading on his book that's I received information that's from CIA or American Americans troop and on Iraq. That's Muqtada Sadr has followers, less than 60 people, and that guy was at least a million guy who follow him with not even thinking. They just follow him. And the first battle started. It's called the first the Najaf battle back to 2003. And then the ways that America control Iraq, it was funny actually. Those people have no idea what's the Iraqis' culture, what's how's the Iraqi thinking. They try to and after that, what is 2003 too, they say no Iraqi military, send everyone home. Imagine hundreds, thousands of people went home with no job, and there's have no source of live. And 6 months later, or one more year, those people start making militias or join to Al Qaeda, because two reasons. First of all, against Americans, and second one, they need to live. They need money. So who was pay them? That was coming to him, to that side. What I try to say, that's the Americans. Even the people who they bring, the people who was against Saddam Hussein, who lives in London or who lives inside America, or who lives in Iran, those people they don't know how to rule. They don't know how to manage the country. Iraq have many different cultures, religions, race. We have Kurdish, we have Arabs, we have Sunnis, we have Shiites, we have many like culture. Everyone try to be. Everyone try to show you he's right. So I feel like Americans have no idea, and they waste actually millions of dollars, like $100 million. And even Donald Trump said that. He said like, "What are we doing there?" And that's why I think Obama said that. Said like, "It's horrible there. Like we have no idea what's going on." They try to fix stuff, but it's hard when you put yourself in a place that you have no idea. Same what's going on in Afghanistan. Let's say like if Afghanistan before Americans is better than now. Same. It's worse actually. I have friends from Afghanistan and they saying like it's worse. America there since when 2001 or 2001, right? So it's like less tourists. No, it's more. Just people more educated. No, less educated. So that's the root of everything actually. That's the root. That's like I feel what's going on in Middle East. It's the root of everything started on 90s. Started when the Soviet Union is done, and like Americans was provide the jihadis in Afghanistan through the Saudis to fight the Soviet. I don't know if you see that. But
yes.
Like, the White House, I think the President Reagan received him as title the piece of the Warriors Peace, something like that. Like he received like
the
Taliban leaders like in White House, and looks the Americans have no idea what those people beliefs is, like how they are radical, So they fought with the Soviet, and then when the Soviet is done, they just let them growing up, and we have the second reason that America leave them to like just provide them the weapons and leave them in Afghanistan. It was the Iranian, Ayatollah Khomeini, when he did his revolution back to 1979. So Saudis were scared from Khomeini and his revolution. Like his Shias first. He was 100% against Saudis. He tried to like liberal like Palestine, and so they tried to surround him like from Afghanistan, from the east and from the west by Iraq, and the war started since that time and it never stopped.
I think the roots of this go even further back, and I think that it's important to. I don't think America is the root of the situation. I think they've desperately exacerbated the situation, though. They've made it worse. Mm-hmm. And I think where that starts is, so if you look at the end of the Second World War, mm-hmm. America is in a place where they're generally very anti-interventionist. And there's a treaty that America makes with England mm-hmm. for the terms in which it will enter the war, called the Atlantic Charter. Mm-hmm. And the Atlantic Charter is going back all the way to something called the Peace of Westphalia, which is the Peace of Westphalia is part of what divided Europe up into nation states, which could be self-governing. So the Atlantic Charter was saying, if the Americans got involved in the war, then all the world powers had to support self-determination of all their overseas territories. Mm-hmm. Not just the German states, but the British Empire as well. So England had to give its countries the choice, do you want to be part of this as well? And for a while, America supported that consistently. even there's a crisis in Egypt in the Suez Canal where the British were trying to take this canal off the Egyptians because of their trade, and America intervened and said, no, this is their land, it's their business, you guys leave.
Yeah.
So America is consistently doing that for a while. But then the Cold War, they're so focused on stopping the spread of communism that there's a guy called Brzezinski, who's Jimmy Carter's foreign secretary, who basically comes up with a strategy to help supply the Taliban, which is al-Zawahiri from Egypt and then Osama bin Laden from Saudi. So the ideology is already there.
It's there.
But America funds it and arms it for the sake of drawing the Soviet Union into an unwinnable war in Afghanistan, which is, by the way, is a brilliant strategy. It's just an unethical one, just not thinking about the future.
Exactly. They didn't think about the reaction after that. So you agree that monster, then what? Then like what's gonna happen after that? They didn't thinking. Same as they didn't think they didn't think about Saddam's. If Saddam goes, there's a gap. Who's gonna fill this gap? So the Iranian can fill that gap. The Iranian is the most the major enemy to America. So they wasn't thinking. I told you, they are confused. They do things. They don't think about the future, what's going to happen after that. So yeah, I agree with it.
And the thing is, it's difficult to think about the future because we've now had 3 presidents of the Iraq War. So George Bush may have had some idea of what he's trying to do. Obama then has a different idea. Then Trump has yet another idea. So it's very difficult to have any consistency with that.
James, all the world is now thinking about Americans, what's going on in the White House. I mean, Iranians signed the nuclear contract, and with Americans and with the European, and with Barack Obama. Trump coming say no, this deal I will cancel it. So what's the guarantee? That's why European Union say, if Americans cancel this from their side, from our side. Now, if you sign something, if you sign a contract, you cannot just cancel it because you don't like it. It's because it's not fair, first of all. And it's we don't talk about individual thing. This is countries, this is nations, this is how the world works. The problem is now, I don't know, to be honest, if a Russian sign something with the Americans, who said next president will cancel it?
Right.
So what's the guarantee?
Right.
And that's what the Iranians said the 12 points that Trump wanted, he's tried to talking about the 12 points. Otherwise this deal won't happen. So they said, all right, if we agree for was this 12 points that's the Trump want us to sit and sign for it, was the guarantee the next president will not make him 20 or 25 points, So yeah, I mean, it's confusing. It's confusing for everyone. Every president coming has his own idea, and he has how many years? 4 or maybe 8, but he changed everything. He tried to do his own opinions, which is affect the world, affect the peace world, affect everything, affect the people income. It's not fair.
And that's the thing. Whether you believe the president is doing a good job or a bad job, still changes every 8 years.
Yeah.
So if somebody you think is going to be doing a bad job will almost inevitably be there 4 years, 8 years from now. So it's a very clumsy form of government for managing an empire.
True. It's true. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard to form. From an opinion, it's hard to managing this huge empire with the 8 years, and to do your own ideas, because you have to looking further than your 8 years. What's gonna happen after you? What's the effects that can happen after that?
It's very, very difficult to have a long-term vision. And by our constitution, we're not supposed to have an empire. And so it's not really well set up for governing one of this constant intervention everywhere. So there's one of the things that came in early Christianity about 450 years in was something called just war theory. When it's right for a state to get involved in a conflict. And one of the things is limited objectives. That you've got to figure out what you can actually accomplish, how much time is going to take you to accomplish that, and whether it's worth doing that. And if the answer is no, then it's not a just war. You could have a real bad situation that's happening that somebody probably should do something about and be right to intervene in. But if you don't have a plan, that usually just makes the situation worse. And that's what's happened in part with Iraq.
In Iraq, unfortunately, we thought we are really, really important to Americans, to them, as American allies, American friends, because first of all, they get off Saddam Hussein and make us free. They bring us the democracies to us, but they left us alone. After George W. Bush, when Obama coming, he was just want to get out. That's what he want. And people really get confused. Many people actually left Iraq because either they were working with American troops or they was saying that's, hey, let's be a part of the Americans, allies or American, because in the Middle East there's two sides, either going to Iran or going with America. So the people was always saying, hey, let's be with America. Let's see what America did in South Korea after war. See what America did to Germany after the war. See what America do to Saudis or Dubai. Because it's all built by the Western world. Those people, when Americans just get out from Iraq, they shouldn't going to their pay, a military base, they facing the people who's Iran. I talk about the militias, I talk about the government actually, who's 90% of them loyal to Iran, and Iran is Iranian. So those people feel disappointed. Those people feel why? It's hard because and most of them just run away or got ridden by the militias in Iraq. And that's make people thinking what's right now, the fronts in Iraq. When people now say, all right, if you see the sign on Iraq, was the people, saying, the young people who say, we don't need America in the first place. We don't need Iran in the second place, or the opposite, It's because we were victims for two conflicts between America and Iran, which has caused thousands of people who died. 3-4 major cities like Mosul smashed to the ground. 100,000 of people who immigrate outside Iraq. Because why? Because there is two countries fight, and we were the between them. We were the backyard that they fight on, which is not fair, sad, and
It's almost like a messed up family situation. It's that if the Iraqi people are the child, the American government is like the father who has left, keeps no contact, just sends some child support to the mother. And if the mother is the Iraqi government, the mother spends all her money on drugs, and the kids don't see any of the money that's coming from the father. And then the Iranian government is like this shady boyfriend of the mother who comes around sometimes, who's not good to the kids either. And the Iraqi people are there, left to fend for themselves.
True. Not only this, it's so Don't confuse. So in Facebook, actually, I always like write down stuff, and I always try to like saying, all right, let's sit with Americans and see what's going on, you know, and like even when the people start to like being out the street, you know, you see in Iraq right now, there is huge like movement against the government. We thought American will start with us, like take a step with us, saying something about it. But if you see the Americans like major like media and the channels like the TV, they didn't give us like the attention that we need, you know. First of all, we are not violent. We don't use any violence, even we have weapons now. And now there is more than 600 people get killed.
600
and more than 20,000 people who get injured by the Iraqi government force. Hundreds of people kidnapped, and we have no idea where they are. And the only way that we fight is through the social media, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook. But the whole world, it's silent. It's silent. No one talking about this. Like no one care actually, which is I have no idea. Like I was watching the TV back to like 6-7 years ago. Iraq was every single day on TV. Like when it's some car explosions, some big violence happen. Now what we're doing, it's something so civil, something that's so proud of it. People walking on the street to the justice, to their opportunities in job, to their better education, to have home. People miss home. People saying we live in Iraq and we don't feel it's home. If you are sick, you have to travel to India or to Turkey or to Iran or to Jordan because we have no hospital. We sold more than like $80 billion of oil each year. Where is this money going? Corruptions by who? Government. And who's protect this government? Iranian and Americans. It's Iranian like 100% and American it's somehow. Americans come, they saying, all right, this is something called democracies. We have no idea what democracies is. The free election, you go vote to who you want to vote. We say, okay, so first of all, we choose every Sunnis, choose Sunnis, Shias, choose Sunni, Shias, Kurdish, choose Kurdish. For after the civil war, like 4 years later, we figure out, okay, that was so wrong. Let's now vote to people who love Iraq, which is we did. People like I remember 2010, the guy who won the election, his name is Ayad Alawi. He's liberal, and like high educated, and he's lived most of his time in UK. He has really good ideas about Iraq, and what's happened, they didn't let him get the power. And I remember he's sitting and said, we meet on the American's ambassador, and we were talking about like who's going to be the president and why. And he said, like, American pushed me out. He said, well, Iranians want this guy. And look, we're talking with the Iranian about this, and we agreed that Nouri al-Maliki to be the second, like his next like second term because that time he was the prime minister. So that means the American will play a huge role, like to select or to choose who's going to be the prime minister. And that means they have a power, they have a rule in the Iraqis politics. And right now, when the people come out, we need to change the constitutions. We need all the things that's the really like basic. It's for human, like everyone need like hospitals. Like this is something simple, not that's hard. and we will expect, okay, something will like American, the UN at least gonna show up for us, or American will show up for us. Maybe they're gonna support us, at least in media. Nothing. Like, not that, like, they support us, but like not as we expect. Like, that's why we feeling like disappointed. We're feeling alone. We are alone down the street. People alone. People have no idea what's gonna happen. We thought if they kill us, like, let's say they're gonna kill like 40, 50, 100, they shut down the internet in Iraq, and we expect, okay, maybe like Americans move to force the Iraqis government to stop, like cut off the internet. They didn't. People now, that's why people now so mad. And I told you, it's so mad and feel it's not fair.
So what are the goals of the protests? What are the main things people are trying to get from the Iraqi government specifically?
Home.
Home.
Simple. So simple. We need a home. We are sick and tired to being immigrant. We are sick and tired to being like, to carry a weapon and fighting. We are sick and tired to be like, to not have home, not have education. What's the future of our kids? Imagine most of the people outside, who like the protesters, are like, have master degrees. Imagine you graduate and you spend your time and energy and money, and you get your education, like, and get your master degree, and then you say, okay, you don't have anything to do. You have no job. So either you get out, like go to another country, or staying here and be homeless. I don't know.
So the main. So I heard a joke about this from a guy who worked at the State Department, that Obama's walking through Baghdad on his way to see the president, and he sees a man looking for a job, and he gives $100 to the president and says, "Oh, go help that man." The president gives $50 to the general, and says to the general, "Go help that man." The general gives 25 to the colonel. He says, "Oh, go help that man." The colonel gives 15 to the police chief. Says, "Go help that man." The police chief gives 5 to the police officer, and then the police officer goes up to him and says, "Obama said to go get a job."
That's right. So that's exactly what's happening. This is so true. This is so true. If you want to get a job, you have to pay, And okay, so you pay, and this is real. Like, okay, let's say Jaafer tried to be like to have a job with the, like, in hospital, or in I want to join military, actually, like the Iraqis, true, You have to pay. You have to pay $5,000, and they're gonna take 50% of your like 10 next salaries. This is the corruption as well that we're talking about.
And I hear that was pretty instrumental in ISIS, because what would happen is you'd have a colonel of the battalion who's supposed to have 20 men and is given, say, $50,000 to pay them. He would send 17 of them home, keep 2 other guys with him, and they'd split the money between them. So when ISIS come, the Iraqi government thinks they have a battalion there. They think they have, say 1,000 men. What they actually have is about 50 men, because the guy is just keeping all the money for himself, and it's defenseless.
True. We have terms in Iraq. It's called fada'iyin in Arabic, which means aliens. Aliens means that fake, or like fake names. Okay, the general give the government, okay, I have like 10,000 soldier who's like under my power, like I'm like the responsible of them. You will find there's like 5,000. Let's say 1,000 or 2,000 are, we call it aliens, fake names. So he would just take salaries for fake people. There's no people under these names. And the next like 20 or like say like another like 4,000, they just get salaries. They sitting home or they going somewhere, I don't know, but they have like the salaries, and they just come to the base, just sign or give the print like the fingerprint, and the general like a military or the officer take like 50% of the salary for them, and they give you the 50%. So that's the corruptions. That's what make everything like horrible. And you know, like what's happened, ISIS was react for the Sunnis community against the government, because how they started, the Sunnis people started same as what we doing right, as Shias in Baghdad, and what the government did, they killed them, and they killed them until they forced them to have the weapons, and when they have the weapons, the conflict started, like the war started back to 2014. And because they are Sunnis and they're like, Syria was on fire on that days, so the ISIS was had the opportunities to growing up on this area, because people was mad at the government, and anyone, like when people mad, they need anything against the government. Now as a Shias, and most of the Iraqis on the street right now, it's belong to Shias, we say, all right, everyone have weapon, we don't need to use them, because we don't need a second Syria, or we don't need the tragedy time that's happened like to 2014 with thousands of people killed. We don't need this. We are saying just get out. Like, it's simple. You guys, so the prime minister is gone. He just quit. We need the parliament to have like a rule like for the election, like a new law, like new rules for the election, and the parliament just like quit, and we need elections that's the UN, like watch everything in Iraq for 2 months, 3 months, six months until we have like a new election, choose another stuff, another government, and that's all we want. And we need Iran to get out. Yeah, Iranian control Iraq. That's the problem.
So it seems like there's some specific goals of the protests, but it seems like that's really just the beginning of the work.
Yes,
because the corruption problem isn't something that is just one person at the top, and if you just got rid of that person, everything would be better.
No,
it's widespread.
It's widespread. It's turned to be a culture. It's turned to be, and actually Americans people support this. 700 million spending for something called like separate the democracies, and when they're asking some Americans, like who's working in the American embassy in Baghdad, what's the 700 million for? They said, we just pay this to make the community in South Iraq more civil. So it's ridiculous. What do you guys mean by that? They say, well, we just did this, and they didn't talking about it anymore. So back to your point. So the corruptions, it's a huge thing in Iraq. It's unbelievable, actually. Like, by the way, we took the first place, like after I think Somal or Sudan or I don't know, but we take the first place in the corruption in the world for like 4 or 5 years, which is so funny. And because a lot of money, oil sources, and no one says stop. They start talking on TV. Imagine on TV, like they showing up, say, yeah, we all thieves. Like, I'm talking about a guy who lead a party in Iraq. He has like huge party. Say, yeah, well, we all divide that piece of cake, and and everyone get his piece of cake. their sons on Instagrams with their Ferraris, Porsches, Rolex watch, huge beautiful apartments in Dubai or in Maldives, or they're on like jet, like it's people eating on the garbage, people like have no school, 40 kids in one class, like small room, like they cross the board, like they cross the red lines.
And this is not simply some people being rich from businesses they've made. This is people being rich because they're literally embezzling money that's intended for the development of the country.
The not the prime minister, the vice prime minister. He was on SSI program here inside America. He received like the financing from the social security because he didn't work. So they paid him like $900 monthly because he can't work. And imagine someone like this guy controlling the minister who's responsible for the electricity in Iraq, which the government fund this like at least like $2-3 billion a year. And when he's showing on the TV, it was okay. I did contract with this government or with this company, which is I figured out later this was a fake company. He said the guy who was the reporter said, "What do you mean by it's fake?" He said, "Well, I don't know. It was just a fake, and our money is gone." Even their excuse, it's silly. Even their excuses, it's like not respectful. If you did something bad to me, give me a reason. But it was like, I don't know. They was thinking we are not more than stupid. They was thinking we are crazy, maybe kids to saying. When we talk about for kids, hey, don't go out. There's dragon will eat you. Yeah. There's no dragon actually, but they are kids. And they was deal with us like that. They was talking to us like this.
So what is the problems in Iraq right now? What problems do you think that it's realistic to expect the government to have solutions to? And what solutions do you think need to come from the people on a wide scale?
We don't know. To be honest, no one knows. I'm talking every day with at least 5-6 people who's on the central of Baghdad in Tahrir Square, whereas all the people are there, and we don't know. No one knows. The problems, the corruption in everywhere, government, everywhere. So the military. So in Egypt, when the protest happened, the military came to street, and Assisi, the president of on Egypt now, he's who was a huge general, he was the general who controlled the military. So he take the power, and that's it, done. Period. He just take mercy to the jail, and everything is done. So he control it. In Iraq, we don't have main power. We have mafias, the mafia of government, the mafia of the military, the mafia of the Iranian militias, the mafia people who controlling the states. Even the states. Just imagine that the prime minister have no control on the main airport, the Baghdad airport. Seriously, this is serious. He cannot change one employee. He cannot change the governor. He cannot. He have no power. Because there is something deep than that. There is someone behind the stage who control everything, which is, I believe, is Qasem Soleimani, if you know this name. Soleimani is the Iranian big general in Al-Tala'at. It's like CIA, and this dude control Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. And so he's always showing in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. Yeah.
That's fascinating how deep that goes. I've been spending a lot of time thinking about how you go from a country like where Iraq is right now, with a lot of potential, with a lot of corruption, and I've been trying to think through it through the lens of the Bible specifically, because there's so much in the Bible about the kind of things happening now. So I was reading up before this, and one of the prerequisites to being a leader in the nation of Israel, talking about the biblical, not talking about the modern state of Israel, talking about the ancient law, is that to choose leaders who hate a bribe. And that implies more than just, oh, I don't do it. It's that they hate it everywhere they see it. But also, there's this passage that says, unjust weights and measures are an abomination to God. That every time you say one thing and it's actually a different thing, that's something that God himself hates. But I think one of the prevailing problems everywhere is that Jesus describes it this way, that why do you say to your brother, let me take that speck out of your eye, when there is a plank in your eye? First remove the plank from your own eye, and then you'll see clearly to be able to help your brother. So the Bible is clear that change in the world has to start with self-reflection. That we can't, because it's so easy to fall into this idea of, okay, the problem in the world is out there somewhere. So there's this Indonesian proverb I heard, which was me against my brother and I against our village and us against our nation, us and our nation against the West. And everything's defined by this standoffish relationship, thinking you're better than other people, rather than dealing with your own issues. So for me, I have to be really disciplined. I can look at injustices happening in the world, yet when my kids are having an argument, I don't listen to it properly. I just want it to go away. So I can look at the American government and I think, okay, they're tired of Iraq. They just want the problem to go away. When my own children are having a dispute, I don't take the time to get to the bottom of what's right and wrong. I just, hey, boys, have a candy, go to different rooms for a while. I don't want to deal with this. If that's the way I'm parenting, then that's the way my children learn justice works. So it has to start on a kind of individual level. It has to start, instead of going, okay, American government sucks, Iraqi government sucks, local government sucks, tribal government sucks, my family sucks, and I'm okay. It has to go with like, okay, how am I messed up? Then what do I need to deal with in my family? Then my tribe, then my city, then my nation. If we have time, we can worry about the world. And that's been the problem with America as well, by the way, that if we were focused enough on our internal problems, we wouldn't have the bandwidth to be worrying about Saddam Hussein. But unfortunately, nations all around the world, and individuals do this too, like to find bad guys to pin all the problems on without taking real responsibility for the things going on in your life.
Actually, James, this is the protesters in Iraq. If you see the people who got killed or injured, most of them, it's like they born in 90s and 20s, like 2000, 2001, or end of 90s. The generation before that, it was raising and growing up on the really religious environment, like so religious. The Iraqis government, the title of them are religious. Like they was all talking about like we President the Ali, the cousin of Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad, because they are Shias. Even the fighting with the Sunni communities. That's why Sunnis, like when ISIS coming, I told you it was a react because the government is Shias, So it was conflict with Sunnis and Shias some way. It was politics stuff, but it takes that certain like way. You know, this is Sunnis, this is Shias. So the Sunnis coming have ISIS, the Shias have the militias who supported from Iran, and they start fighting. My generation, we don't believe in this. I growing up after 2003 with open sources in internet, with the YouTube, the social life, the social media. So I have many sources than our like the generation before had it, and our ideas it's way different. The people in government, they don't understand us. They don't understand. We don't care about what's your religion background. I need to live a life, just a life, you know. But and you know, like even like the democracy, this freedom of speech, all these things we really care about. You know, I want to post anything I want on Twitter or on Facebook, and I want to say whatever I want on my YouTube channel. You know, those people don't take this like seriously. They feel they are not government. They feel they are our parents. You know, they shown up on the TV. The prime minister shown up on TV and say, "Why you guys have like these types of genes?" He was talking about this. People coming out for something, and he's talking about something way different. Why? Oh yeah, I see the people on the street, and they most are kids. And he's saying this, and most are the kids with the Western haircut. So they don't take people serious, you know. There is a gap between the way that we're thinking to the world and the way that we want Iraq has to be, and their thing. They're so old, like their ideas. It's funny, and so it's die actually. Like it's something way old, and that's why they are like out. They are out. They can't understand us.
Curious, what it seems like a tangent, but it's not. What's the Arabic word for prime minister?
Rais Wuzara.
What does that literally mean? It just means
the prime minister.
Prime minister. Because you talked about Iraq moving past a religious type of government, but actually prime minister is a very religious term. It actually comes directly from the Bible.
Mm.
So
I didn't know that.
No, I only found out a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
The leader of my country is literally called the prime minister.
Mm-hmm.
But where that comes from is there's a moment where Jesus is with his disciples in this upper room, and he washes their feet, and he tells them, don't be like the leaders of the nations or the Gentiles, that means nations. Don't be like the leaders of the nations who lord power over each other. Mm-hmm. But whoever wants to become greatest among you must first become the servant of all. Mm-hmm. And so first, prime, minister, servant.
Okay.
So the whole premise of that title is supposed to be somebody who's pouring his life out for the service of others, not somebody who is getting rich on everybody else. So Jesus says, describing his own leadership, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. And no one takes my life from me. I give it freely. I have the authority to lay it down. I have the authority to take it up again. So the model he's trying to give us through that title is somebody who's willing to die for the good of their own people. And that's the kind of leaders that God wants us to have in the world. And most of the time it won't literally look like dying. Like it could mean the protest is about to get shot in the street and the prime minister pushes them out of the way, takes the bullet himself. Right? That's a way to do that. But what it means is that you're tirelessly working for the good and the well-being of the people God has put under your leadership. Being prepared to even give up your own life for that purpose.
Why do you think it's like the leaders of the world today, like so far from the idea of the pre-ministers in the Bible?
Well, because I think a large part of it is who you're modeling yourself on.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody has an idea of what greatness looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about George Bush, for example, he grows up with the idea of the greatest generation, right? And what do the greatest generation do? They go into Germany and Japan, they defeat the bad guys, and then through occupation and stewardship, bring about peaceful, prosperous nations as a result of that.
Yeah.
So what does greatness look like in the mind of that man? It looks like finding the bad guy to fight and doing that. And so for most of European history, the model of greatness is Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
Who is part of Iraqi history as well.
True.
Because what does he do? He goes to the east, he conquers enormous amounts of land, and then brings order through his philosophy, right? He's the ultimate warrior. He's the ultimate governor, the ultimate politician. So then translate that to the Muslim world.
Yeah.
You have got the idea of, in some people's minds, the Sahaba is the greatest generation that ever lived. Muhammad is the best example of humanity that's ever lived. And, well, what did Muhammad do? Whether you like him or not, he's somebody who was an amazingly successful military commander. He was a great governor and is a very religious man. And everybody basically tries to play into those ideas. Look how strong I am. Look how powerful I am. Look how good I am at governing.
Yeah.
Look how smart I am. Right? Everybody's trying to play into that. And the denial of the crucifixion of Jesus in the Muslim world and the Western world forgetting that completely.
Yeah.
Means that you don't have this ultimate example that doesn't have greatness through power and strength and suppression of your enemies, but actually has greatness through sacrificing yourself, not just for your friends, but even for your enemies. And that is actually the engine that gave us freedom of expression in the West. Because if you look at where we got that in our law, we get that from something called the Letter Concerning Toleration by John Locke. Mm-hmm. And his appeal is look at the person of Jesus. He doesn't destroy people for the sake of truth. Mm-hmm. He instead is willing to give his own life for the sake of truth. And in a free and then comes back from the dead. Mm-hmm. So you can't kill the truth. So we don't need to worry about persecuting errors. Mm-hmm. We just have to create this free and fair arena where truth and error can do battle publicly and truth will always win, because that's what Jesus modeled. Mm-hmm. So because the West has lost this idea of who Jesus is, this true servant leadership, it can no longer embody the ideas that actually made it great. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult. And so what you're trying to do is a system that became great because of the example of Jesus, has forgotten Jesus, and has a shell of that system left, then tries to go and impose the shell of that system on another culture that doesn't know what it means, right? Doesn't even have that example. So I think America needs to go back to its root of servant leadership.
Sorry, I just want to stop you here.
Yeah.
Why you believe that the Western world being so far from their root, from their religion root, why the generation right now not religious than before? Why I don't see people compared with the back last century, 90s, 60s, 40s, less people in church right now than before. People don't go to church on Sundays anymore.
I think there's a few things going on there.
I understand people like Muslims who turn to be an atheist is because as a react for the radical movements in the Middle East, But like, what's going on here?
So I think it's actually cycled around a few times in Europe. This isn't the first time people have been irreligious.
Okay.
So in the 1700s, you have the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have a large move back to it in the 1800s.
Yeah.
And it's actually very interesting to watch how the West operates as an empire through those times. So the slave trade in England comes from very irreligious people. And I'm not saying all irreligious people are like this at all, but I found this out and I met the guy the day after, actually. The first British person to take slaves was just a pirate called John Hawkins. I found that out one Friday. Then 24 hours later, I met his descendant. It was kind of crazy. But then after that starts, you have this, and so the British Empire is generally non-interventionist and actually does not allow missionaries to go to its territories because it's just about trade.
Yeah.
And then you have a religious revival in the late 1700s, early 1800s, and that gets people more, oh, wait, what are we doing with all this? And that leads to the abolition of slavery. It leads to the abolition of a lot of pretty weird laws in India, like people burning widows alive with their dead husbands. Now, that's not justifying the existence of an empire, just to say that sometimes it's a societally conscious empire, sometimes it's not. And the same is true with America. The more conscious it's been about its heritage, the less imperialistic it has been. And the more blinded it is with heritage, the more imperialistic it becomes. Yeah. Because if you think that we're just great because we're great, that's a great license for imperialism. But if you think we're just like every other people, we have this heritage which allows us to approach corruption in this unique way, and God can do this through anyone, then it makes you a little less imperial in your thinking. But in this generation, it starts in the late 1800s that you have this liberalization of how you read the Bible. So in Germany, you have people who believe it doesn't literally mean what it says it means. So that's become a very popular stream of thought. Yeah. But if it doesn't really mean what it says it means, then there's not really a bunch of great reasons to actually believe any of it. Why hold on to the moral lessons if you don't believe it's literally true? So that stream of thought, combined with the luxury and comfort people have, there's this numbing sense that the wealthy society we live in can have, that we don't think about death, we don't think about our life. And what you'll find with a lot of people here is that a more religious side of them will come out in times of crisis. Because when you're squeezed, what's really inside you comes out. And people will blame that on, oh, well, I just had a moment of weakness. Yeah. But in fact, that moment revealed what's really going on in them. So there's an intentional neglecting of the authority of the Bible from within the church. And then with outside of the church, there's this draw of wealth, of sex, of all these things that draw people in. But I think it's just part of a cycle. I don't think it's the end by any means.
No, yeah, of course, yeah, I know. But what I feel is like when people going less like religion, like start not believe, some values just gone. I don't think like the moral values. No, I just feel like with really like if we see in the last century, like the two major, actually the most like movements was leading like by the religious leaders like Martin Luther King, or inside America talking, or like Malik, what's his name? The guy who converted to Islam.
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X. So I mean, like the leaders was religious people, who try to fix things. These days, I don't see like, I missed it actually. I don't see like huge movements about stuff, like about some problems, and I don't see it because I feel people start being shy to be religious. I know a lot of people like even change their names from religious names to just a names that means nothing. And when we're talking on public, they just like saying, okay, let's talk about Muslims. People like Muslims I know, they saying I'm culturally Muslim, or like I'm Muslim but I don't practice. They just say I don't practice because they push you. They want to say, okay, just a Muslim, or oh, my parents is Muslims. I don't know why. Like, I'm proud to be Muslim. You're proud to be Christian. It's just who we are. But these, like, now people just shy, don't want to say, I don't know. For me, I don't know I don't understand these things.
Well, I don't think America has got less formally religious.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't become less religious. The religion now is just politics.
True. Yeah, maybe that's right.
And so the thing with Seattle
Mm-hmm.
is that Seattleites don't realize that they have a worldview.
Okay.
They think, oh, I don't have a worldview. I'm just a normal, empathetic human being.
Okay.
And so they don't realize why they believe what they believe, why they vote for the policies they vote for, or how they think the world, what they think reality is.
Yeah.
All of us have a worldview of how we see reality. And that people just aren't prepared to actually ask questions about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think any time that you have a religion in public life or ideas in public life, people with minority ideas can be afraid to discuss those. But it's really difficult because if you don't have a worldview that you can articulate, you don't really have an organizing principle which to build society.
Yeah.
So what you need in Iraq right now is more than you need a less corrupt government, which you absolutely need. There needs to be some organizing principle of what are we doing here? Like, what are the ideas and what's the system that we're going to rally around? Because even with, say, because in America, it largely comes out of the Protestant Reformation. And this is one of the difficulties you have in the Muslim world right now, is that people are talking about, okay, we want a reformation, we want a change, but it's difficult to articulate what that looks like. Because what I experience is the Muslim world is full of people who are tolerant and kind and generous and accepting of people who are different than them and are happy to live with them. It's full of that. Iraqis, there's so many Iraqis like that.
Yeah.
There's so many people in Saudi Arabia like that.
True.
But nobody can quite articulate why. They can't build, it's difficult to say, okay, we should do this because often what it is it's picking some stories of Muhammad, some verse of the Quran that kind of, okay, I see this example here, and therefore I want to live this way.
Yeah.
And you experience this, that some people kind of have a hadith for everything.
True.
The people who want freedom have a hadith for that. People who want a strong government have a hadith for that. And both have some pretty long-standing traditions in the Muslim world. So it's very difficult to get an organizing principle for a large group of people under that banner, because it gets complicated. Because if it's a generational thing, that you're suddenly not just arguing against the government, you're arguing against your parents as well.
Yeah. It's still like I mean, it's so hard for us and like to know the solution for it. Like, we tried, I'm talking about Iraq, like in Iraq, we tried like the violent way to solve the problems, and it doesn't work at all. Now we trying the peace way. And the problem is that, I mean, the Iraqi situation is complicated because there is no big power. I told you it's like everyone has his own power. And now the people on street want to take those people out. But those people have the source of money, and they control the source of money, and they have the most weapons. And we just dying. And we don't know what's gonna happen in the future, and what we should do as the next step after we decide to change the situation. We decided we are out the street right now, but we don't know what's the next step, and because all of them is young people, all of us, it's young, we don't have the politics experience, and most of the people who were believe they can help, either they give up and they just sitting at home, or they get killed, or then run away, or being a part of the problem, which is there's money, why not? They jump to the being a part of the government. So the people now are staying there. I'm 100% sure they are staying there. They want it to be really peaceful movement, no violence at all. We don't carry weapons, and we just need the justice and hope.
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult situation, but the whole thing, there's no centralization, could actually end up to the country's advantage in the long run if it's used in the right way. I think that we all need to learn from history, and I think the good news for Iraq is that Europe used to look exactly like this at times.
Okay.
Complete collapse of centralized power, complete corruption, everybody's in desperate poverty, and through some things that happened in the 1500s onwards, it was lifted from that to the world it is today, which is by no means a perfect world. But I'd rather live now than I would live 500 years ago. So there's a lot of lessons to learn from history if people are willing to listen to them. And I think that the people of Iraq would do really well to think through the Protestant Reformation, the formation of America, the British Civil War, the things that so there's a way to learn from Europe's history without making the same mistakes.
Which is true. Our history is so violent. The last 5 presidents in Iraq got killed.
Yeah.
Since we changed from the king, we called the king 1920s, and when we turned to be republic, we have the government, we called all of them until Saddam Hussein. Actually, the prime minister right now, people on the street want him to push him to the court. Now, this is our first Iraqi generations who's being against government and don't use any violence.
Yeah.
We need the civil things, courts, laws, new constitutions for this nation. Looks we learned that there's the politics situations don't the best way to fix our situations not by violence.
Yeah.
Not by violence, by peace way.
How much tax do Iraqis pay to the government?
The yearly?
Yeah, but just per month, out of an average paycheck, if there is a paycheck, how much tax are they paying?
None.
No. See, there's an opportunity.
Yeah.
That while they're not providing anything, if people can find out how to produce things and protect what they make from thieves, then at least they're not having what they're making taken by the government, which means you've got a lot of potential if you can cut off an area of sort of safety and stability to do things differently, that you could actually be more or less left alone by the government, and which is difficult. We're not used to living this way, But if you look at how America starts, it's people who leave England because they not really with many resources, but they were just going to move to Holland.
Yeah.
But they were going to lose their culture if they did that. And they didn't want their kids, they wanted their kids to speak English. They wanted them to celebrate what it was to be English, but they didn't want to live under the corruption of the monarchy. So they came to America with nothing and then figured out how to survive and went from surviving to thriving.
This is why people stink even they get killed. That's what I told in the first place. Home. We need home.
Yeah.
We're tired to be changed. And like people tired to be like out of Iraq, and they see our culture. Like, you have to change your culture if you move out, you know? So they're sick of going out. And when we see our neighborhoods, like all the countries around us, they live well. I mean, Saudis live so good. Turkish people, Iranian people, Kuwait people in Kuwait, Jordanians, all of them lives good, except us.
Yeah.
Except us. So why we don't live?
Well, I think with Saudis have paid a unique price for that. That they're trying to get out of right now. They're in their own hole.
Yeah.
Because they've paid no tax. The government has paid for 90% of everything in the country for the last 50 years. And that's unsustainable.
I know.
And so they're now trying to figure out, okay, how do we actually make this a real country with a real economy? Otherwise, they're going to collapse.
True.
So there's a lot of potential, but you can't look to the exact solutions of other countries to find that. Otherwise, Iraq is Iraq. You've got to figure out in its own way.
I hope so.
I'm confident, actually. There's a prophecy in the Bible, in a book called Isaiah, which was written 2,600 years ago, 600 years before Jesus. And it talks about this time that there's going to be trouble, but then Egypt, Israel, and Assyria, which would be modern Iraq. It says that there will be a highway between them, and that there will be peace. That the Iraqis, the Israelis, and the Egyptians will worship God together and be called a blessing in the midst of the earth. So I, as a Christian, somebody who believes in biblical history, I believe that Iraq is the cradle of civilization. It's where humanity has come from. And I don't believe that God's plan for the country is over. I do think there's hope. And I think that if Iraqis study the life of Jesus, figure out what it means to be a servant leader, figure out what it means to measure yourself by God's standards, to get the help you need to remove the evil and the corruption from within us, and then work to be a blessing and a servant to the culture around you. I think Iraq can be transformed.
I hope so. I really believe like God will help them to success and to reach that point that those people want to, because actually we deserve it. We worked hard in the last 16 years, and we suffered a lot through the war and like all this. I call it like the huge tornado, and we still standing there. We still want the home that we dream of. Yeah.
Well, my grandmother grew up in a war-torn city. It had been bombed to the ground by Germany.
Okay.
And my dad grew up on government rations because they were still getting the economy back together. So and you look at England now, you'd never realize that. So there's always hope.
Yeah, of course.
Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, James.
And thank you for listening to the Almeida Initiative podcast. We will be back next week with another episode.